Man, look at this audience. They look great, don't they?
I actually agree. Would anyone like to come up here and host instead? No? Okay, well, I guess y'all have to settle for me and Titus.
I guess they do. Thank you guys for coming to this event. It's been a pleasure. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Titus King. I'm going to be your plus one, your master of ceremony here today. A little bit about myself. I'm a student here at Tarrant County College. I'm a financial aid advisor here as well as a student mentor. A little bit about me. If you don't see me running around like a chicken with his head cut off, I'm probably in my natural habitat, the cafeteria here. Sorry, I had to shout them out right quick. They make really good quesadillas. But all jokes aside, thank you guys for having me. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Faith Dillard. I am a student and student worker here at the Trinity River campus. I have had the pleasure of working in the Department of Student Activities, where you may have seen me on campus giving tours, putting up flyers, updating posters, and certainly getting my steps in. And while I'm excited to graduate in the spring, I'm even more excited to be here tonight and the 12th annual Celebrating Strides with you all.
But we got a special treat for you guys. Allow me to introduce Dr. Sherwanda Riley, Associate Professor of English, who will be announcing the Star Spangled Banner here. If Miss Riley could come up to the stage, please.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All
evening.
right. All right. So, it is the tradition when we sing the Star Spangled Banner that you stand on your feet. So, would you please stand? And that also will keep us standing when we do lift every voice and sing the Negro National Anthem. All right. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now introducing music vocal performer Victoria Malone, who will sing Lift Every Voice.
Victoria Malone. All right. Guess Mix Malone couldn't be here with us today. Oh, there you go. Look nice.
Thank you. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with the harmony Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the roads we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come, treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. We have come, treading our path through the tears that's been watered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary tears, God of our sovereign years, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy mind led us into the night, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadows beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
That was beautiful.
That's a hard act I won't want to follow. I don't think you guys want to hear me come up here singing.
Luckily, you don't have to. Next, we have the welcome presented by Dr. Jason Abreu, Vice President of Student Affairs here at TCC Trinity River Campus.
Good evening. Oh, no, 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 no. Good evening. Good evening, TCC community. So glad all of you are joining us here this evening at the Tarrant County College, Trinity River campus. Really exciting. It's very difficult to go after two renditions, especially after Dr. Riley. Dr. Riley, thank you for your presentation there and for always being that student affairs champion. So we thank you for that. And as well for Ms. Malone. Thank you for that rendition as well. We appreciate you being here and know that TCC is your home. For all of us who are here this evening, on behalf of our Chancellor, our Board of Trustees, I've seen several presidents and individuals that are representing the Chancellor's Cabinet. Welcome to this evening's celebration of Black History Month. Tonight we have an opportunity where we can celebrate the story behind creativity. And we're quite fortunate that tonight, being February 29th, we will not have another February 29th for another 4 years, which means that we can be quite creative with the extra day that we've been given. So definitely see that as an opportunity. We hope that tonight we have friendship, we have fellowship, we have engagement opportunities with show, with poetry, with presentations from Faith and Titus, with musicians, but that most importantly, we all come together as one united group of individuals taking an opportunity to celebrate this month of Black History Month. So looking forward to this evening. We hope that all of us can find this space where we cultivate dialogue, share stories, and have an opportunity to celebrate each other and each other's achievements as well. Thank you for coming this evening tonight once again. Thank you for having an opportunity to celebrate. And for everybody who's hosting us, we also have a silent auction. So I want to make sure that we mention that. We have individuals that are here really supporting this endeavor. So thank you very much. Enjoy this evening's programming, and may the show continue with Faith and Titus. Thank you.
We have one more big boss here. I was just made aware that Dr. Madison, the president here at TCC Trinity River, just came in office. So if Dr. Madison, if you have anything to say, please stand up or come to the stage. Talk about this weather, man. The weather is nice, isn't it? Bipolar. No problem, so just allow me to get started. I'm glad to be partaking in Celebrating Strides. Celebrating Strides is an annual celebration in the recognition of Black History Month that was started at Tarrant County College District by Chancellor Irma Johnson Hadley. Hadley's life began at TCC when she came from Northeast Campus in 1968 at the age of 26 years old, so she was 3 years my senior. She was one of only 4 African Americans to be on the faculty, but eventually Hadley moved to a larger scale, reluctantly leaving the classroom to be the Director of Personnel and then Vice Chancellor of Human Resources. Turn page. When Hadley became Chancellor, she zeroed in, however, on student success. In addition to creating programs for student success, she was not at all shy about funding students. Hadley's heart was big enough to take on the world outside of TCC. Hadley was known as the voice of the African American community, and she impacted many others, but she always had time for the individual students. She has been called things like inspiring, a transformational leader. Find somebody like her and I'll hire them. But she described herself as just a little girl from Leggett, Texas, who thought she could do anything. This evening, I'm glad to see that her legacy lives on in me, in my co-host Faith, and in all of us. But there's a lot more Black history to celebrate that individuals don't know about, and she was made well aware of this. But for this theme of Celebrating Strides, we will explore the history of African Americans and the arts. So let's begin about the history.
African American art is infused with African, Caribbean, and Black American lived experiences. In the fields of visual and performing arts, folklore, literature, language, fashion, culinary, architecture, film, music, and other forms of cultural expression, the African American influence has been paramount. African American artists have used art to preserve history and community memory as well as for empowerment. Artistic and cultural movements, such as the New Negro, Black arts, Black Renaissance, hip hop, and Afrofuturism, have continue to set the trends for popular trends around the world. In 2024, we examined the varied history and life of African American arts and artisans.
Now, without further ado, we have a poem by Essie Kamasakwashi, the student governor officer at TCC Southeast Campus. So if everybody can give her a round of applause.
Time, 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 time. The time that flies cannot be defined. Set in stone, the struggles they behold. I remember when it started with our forefathers who were captured. Not only captured on the streets, but from our native continents to the dream, they say. Only to be stepped on, thrown off, and packed up like a can of sardines. Desperate to be heard, desperate to be seen, desperate to be treated like a being, word. But no, the conditions were trapped in my head, like the cell, the smell, the deaths dwelling in my shed, waiting to be snatched up and put down to bed. When we think of Black History Month, we know Martin Luther King. When we think of Black History Month, we know Malcolm X, Rosa Parks. When we think of Black History Month, we know they struggled on the scene, even though we still fight for the E. But I can say with my chest that your tears, struggles, and voice made it so that it is easy to be. Identity, liberty, and justice for all. My enemies hit me, dragged me, and sold me to shore. I can't believe a time where insanity, racism, and injustice crawled. But today is the day to remember it all and celebrate the past and future force, the ones who made it possible to shine with cause, and the ones who continue the legacy shall roar. We celebrate the melanin girls and boys. Despite your shade, this is a community we adore. Brothers and sisters, unite for the call. Never abandon your heritage, even though it comes with spilled blood and sword. Thank you.
Oh man, that was amazing. Woo. Allow me to begin. For centuries, Western intellectuals denied or minimized the contributions of people of African descent to the arts as well as history, even as their artistry in many genres was mimicked and/or stolen. However, we can still see the unbroken train of Black art production from antiquity to the present, from Egypt across Africa, from Europe to the New World, prior to the American Revolution. Enslaved Africans of Low Country began their more than 300-year tradition of making sweetgrass baskets, revealing their artistry via craft.
The suffering of those in bondage gave birth to the spirituals, the nation's first contribution to music. Blues musicians such as Robert Johnson, McKinley Muddy Waters Morganfield, Riley B.B. King, and nurtured a style of music that became the bedrock for soul and gospel. Black contributions to literature include works by poets like Phillis Wheatley, essays, novels, autobiographies, and other written works by writers such as David Walker and Maria Stewart. Black aesthetics have also been manifested through sculptors like Edmonia Lewis and painters like Henry O. Tanner.
Now, we will have a music performance by the music department at TCCD Southeast Campus, who will play So What by Miles Davis. So if everybody can give them a round of applause, please. That was amazing. A lot of soul in that, man. I think my soul came out my body listening to that, man. Okay. In the 1920s and 30s, the rise of Black Renaissance and a new Negro movement brought the Black arts to the international stage. Members of armed forces such as James Reese Europe, artists such as Langston Hughes, Josephine Baker, Louis Malou Jones brought Black culture and Black American aesthetics internationally. And Black culture began its ascent to dominant culture movement in the world. In addition to the Harlem Renaissance, today we recognize cities like Los Angeles, New Orleans, New York were home to many Black artists.
The 1960s continued this thread through the cultural evolution known as the Black Arts Movement, where artists covered issues such as pride in one's heritage and established art galleries and museum exhibitions to display their own work, and other publications such as Black art. This period brought us artists such as Alvin Ailey, Judith Jamison, Amiri Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, and Sonia Sanchez. This movement would not have been as impactful without the influences from the broader Black world, especially the Negritude movement and the writings of Frantz Fanon.
In 1973, in the Bronx, New York Black musicians such as DJ Kool Herc and Coke Rock, sorry, I almost said Coca-Cola, started a new genre of music called hip-hop, which compromises 5 foundational elements: DJing, MCing, graffitiing, breakdancing, and beatboxing. Hip-hop performers also use technological equipment such as turntables, synthesizers, drum machines, samplers to make their songs. Since then, hip-hop has continued to be a pivotal force in the political, social, and cultural spaces and was a median where issues such as racial violence in the inner city, sexism, economic disinvestment, and others took forefront.
Now, we will have dance performances by the Department of Fine Arts at Tarrant County College. For our viewers watching live, the sound will be turned off during this dance performance due to the music copyright of the songs.
Everybody can give them a round of applause, please. A round of applause. You're good. You're doing a great job.
Wow, that was a lot of history. I wonder if anyone learned anything new from this.
That's why it's important to continue to share the history with these.
And strive to continue to preserve and advance the culture for the future, which leads me to the term Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism was used approximately 30 years ago to define cultural and artistic productions that imagine a future for Black people without oppressive systems and examines how Black history and knowledge intersects with technology and science. Afrofuturist elements can be found in the music of Sun Ra, Rashawn Roland Kirk, Janelle Monáe, and Jimi Hendrix. Other examples include sci-fi writer Octavia Butler's novels, Marvel film Black Panther, and artists such as British-Liberian painter Lena Iris Victor, Kenyan-born sculptor Wangeki Mutu, and Caribbean writers and artists such as Nalo Hopkinson and Grace Jones.
But let's do more than tell the audience. But first, I want to announce the last call of the silent auction. I saw a lot of great items like there's a sweater over there, weather bipolar, I think underneath that sweater. Got a backpack over there as well. I need some school supplies. Some crumble cookie. They got some cookies over there too, oh man. Some coffee. I'm good off the coffee, but I still want it.
Well, I know a person that can lead the discussion, Mr. Keith Solisa. For the past several years, Mr. Solisa has served as the producer of the Steve Harvey Morning Show, host of Gospel Sunday, and a valuable member of our incredibly talented Smooth crew. Throughout his career, he has been heard on several Dallas-Fort Worth radio stations, including 100.3 Jams, V100, and 107.5 The Oasis. He has also worked in Atlanta, Georgia, at V103, the #1 radio station in the city. He helped launch Rejoice, Musical Soul Food, a 24-hour gospel music format at ABC Radio Networks, and which he was the morning host for the network for 11 years. Mr. Solisa is the music director of KRNB 105 and is currently heard on Smooth R&B 105.7 here in Dallas-Fort Worth, where he hosts the top-rated Gospel Sunday show.
But before I announce the other person, I think we have another dance performance. So if you guys can go. 2 more? Oh, there you go. We got 2 more performances. All right, so go ahead. Show you what you got. Beautiful, beautiful. Joining Keith Salissa will be Dr. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Anybody else? Okay, just making sure. Joining Keith's Joining Keith Solis will be Dr. Stacy McCormick, Associate Professor and Co-Director of African American and Africana Studies and Comparative Race and Ethnic Studies, Department Chair of TCU, Texas Christian University. Dr. McCormick specializes in 20th and 21st century African American literature, performance, and Black women writers of the African diaspora. She co-edited a special issue called Toni Morrison: An Adaptation, which explores Morrison's work beyond the page and her experimentation with the genre as well. She has published work called Staging Black Fugivity, which traces representations of slavery in Black dramas of the 20th and 21st centuries. Her scholarship has appeared in Millis and a collection Imagining the Black Female Body, Reconciling Image, Print, and Visual and Culture. Her theater and book reviews have appeared in the Theater Journal and the Kalalu. Now, if everybody can give Dr. McCormick a round of applause, please.
Testing.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much for that great introduction, Dr. McCormick. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having us as we celebrate Black History Month on this very last day. And what an incredible event.
Yes.
Great
It's
dancers.
beautiful.
The food smells really, really good.
I know. As soon as I walked in, I was like, whoa.
And of course, the incredible musicians over there. So thank you all for having us here at this beautiful campus to celebrate an incredible month. How has your month been?
You know, it's been great. It's been great. At TCU, I chair comparative race and ethnic studies, and so we've been Black History Month celebrating, and we got an extra day this year because of leap year. So we have another day to add to our
Absolutely.
celebration, but it's been wonderful.
Absolutely. And on the radio, we've been pretty much celebrating by pointing out those that you may not have heard of and talking about some of the things that have been invented by African Americans that you may not have known of. I found out that pretty much the Ring doorbell that we all have, well, a component or facsimile rather, back in the 60s, there was a lady, and I can't think of her name right now, but her husband worked at night, and she didn't feel comfortable being at home alone. So she created this device where she could see who was at the door when they came, and it was on this monitor
Wow.
in her house. And of course, all these years later, we all have that on our phones.
Yes.
Yeah, that. And also, did you know that the answering machine was invented by a black man?
Hmm.
You know how we don't like to answer the phone. We don't want people getting on our nerves. So, and all these years later, thank you, whoever. I don't remember his name either, but we had it in our notes at the station. But just so many different things and so many ways of celebrating this month. And so, as we bring it to a close, so excited to be here at celebrating Strides, African Americans, and the arts. And so, we want to make this interactive. We're going to have a conversation, but we definitely want to hear from you. So, if you have a question or comment as we are discussing, just raise your hand and we will go to you. Dr. McCormick, there's so many. There any research, or let me ask you this: are there any research projects that you both currently are working on or have worked on pertaining to African Americans in the arts and Afrofruition? Is it
Futurism.
futurism?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being conversation. Before I get started with that question, I also wanted to thank TCC for inviting me. Being at TCU, yes. I I have had TCC students come into TCU. Currently, 2 of our CREST majors were TCC students first, and I can't tell you all how wonderful you all are supporting them and moving them into their futures, because they have been some of the best students I've had. And not just those 2, but plenty who've transferred. I just had a master's student from TCC who graduated with her master's degree. And I feel at home because of them. But then I also have friends in the audience here. Amaya Griffin, who was a student of mine, but also brilliant graduate student who I just feel honored to, just be in her presence. And Aisha Malone, who is here and is a dear, dear colleague and friend. And I want to also thank Brittany Schultz for organizing and bringing this together, and so kind of engaging with me even in my email delays, because as I mentioned, Black History Month has been fast and furious at TCU, so my email response time was not the best, but Brittany hung in there with me and got me organized. This has been such a beautifully organized event.
Absolutely.
So, on to my answer to your question. One of the things about studying African American literature in particular is you really get to see the work of Afrofuturism. And I will say that even in studying neo-slave narratives or slave narratives from the 19th and 18th century, you really had to think about enslaved people as Afrofuturists, because they were living a reality they were imagining a reality that did not exist for them. Their lives were pretty much relegated to being a worker and to being separated from their families. But when you read their slave narratives, they're writing about their hopes and dreams for the future. And so when we think about Afrofuturism, that's something Black people have always done. We've always imagined in the face of bleak conditions. We never gave up on a vision of the future that would be powerful, that would be triumphant. And some of our ancestors didn't even live to see the futures that they dreamed about, but their ancestors have. So I just want to kind of ground it in that, because when I think about why I got into studying literature, it was precisely because of the power of that vision. I was like, it had to be something to see this reality around you and say, I know that my future can be more than this. So, I was going to add some of my kind of favorites in this, and I'm going to try to navigate some slides. I had some images because I couldn't talk about this without some images. So when I was thinking about the influential writers, thinkers, and people who I've studied, Toni Morrison is central. I actually teach a class on Toni Morrison. Hint, hint, I'm here to plug some of y'all coming to TCU. I would love to see some of the students who are thinking about coming to TCU. You can come on. And I'm serious about that. Like, seriously, see me after. But Toni Morrison's Beloved, which is what people call a neo-slave narrative. Morrison imagined a life for an enslaved woman whose conditions were so oppressive that she did not want her children to grow up in these systems. So she tried to take her children out of these systems through force. Setha, the main character, we learn about her motivations and how she just has so much hopelessness, and then she eventually has to reckon with that past. So Beloved is one of the ones that I say is like one of my favorites. And
Now,
then
when did you first read that?
I read Beloved in college. I encountered it in an African American literature class. But I've read that book so many times. When you asked that question, I had to think for a minute. It was like, when did I read it the first time? Because it's been a book I come back to over and over again.
What is it about her writing? Because you hear a lot of people specifically name her in terms of one of their favorites.
Yes.
What is it about the way that she writes that has captured your attention?
Yes. Well, Toni Morrison, this is something that I feel like is so important when we talk about some of these, questions around Black art. Toni Morrison wrote about Black people outside of a kind of cultural gaze that was demeaning or stereotypical. And I think for her, The Bluest Eye, her first novel was written in 1970, and it was one of the first novels about Black girlhood. And not just Black girlhood, but Black communities. She wrote about the Great Migration. She really was a cultural archivist in literary form. And I think people cite her because so this is something she said when she talked about coming up, because she was coming of age at Howard University with the civil rights movement and all the things that were happening. And she said, when I went to work in publishing, I felt bad because I wasn't in the streets. But she said, but there's work to be done in print. There's work to be done in this world of publishing, because through this, I can mainstream Black stories. I can tell the stories of this movement. And there's a really important role that writers play. I mean, we've heard of James Baldwin, Richard Wright, people who were documenting this in writing at the time. They played a huge role in narrativizing these movements. And so I think a lot of people reference Morrison because of that.
You said college is when you first picked up that book. What about, someone who may be looking at us right now and maybe they've never picked up any literature from not only a Black author, but any kind of author? When is the perfect time to do that?
Now. The perfect time. And it's a beautiful time for Black writing. Like, there's so many great novels. And, I titled kind of the theme of what I wanted to talk about today in conversation with you is that imagination is resistance. Sometimes when you are in a state where you're like, I need something to lift me up, I need something, critical fiction and different types of imaginative work really give you a new perspective on the world. So I would say right now, and start with The Bluest Eye. That's when I say Toni Morrison, I say start with The Bluest Eye because Beloved is a real challenge. Has anyone read Beloved in this audience? And you probably remember the moments where you had to put the book down and walk away because it was so deep and intense. So yeah, I would say if you're interested in Morrison, The Bluest Eye is such a wonderful text. But yeah.
Absolutely. While we're doing shout outs, I need to shout out Dr. Shawanda Riley, whom I ran into when I walked into the room. She and I actually worked in radio together 20 something years ago. So she is now at I think you said the Northeast campus. So great to be reintroduced to a longtime friend. How does identity impact the creation of art?
How does identity impact the creation of art? So I will go to that. I was thinking about this too, and I'll just finish with this slide to say that the other two works, Black is King, Queen Bey, that film is an Afrofuturistic film. It's beautiful work. And then Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, which was mentioned in the script, that one is also, and it was written in the 1970s and set in the 2020s, so it feels really close to right now, but it's a very good text. But thinking about kind of how imagination impacts creativity or identity, I think was the question. I think about the fact that we are the sum of our experiences. The way we show up in the world is how we create. It influences everything about us. So when I was thinking about that question, I was thinking about, there's a quote also by Octavia Butler from Parable of the Sower, and it really encapsulates this answer. And what she says is, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And that comes out of Parable of the Sower. And I was thinking about that we are constantly moving and changing as individuals from our experiences, and what we produce is a product of that. So that quote kind of gave me a sense of, thinking through that.
Absolutely. Can you discuss whether unlikely experiences like, for example, trauma can impact art, specifically African American women's art? And if so, how do you think that happens?
Yes. Well, when I was talking about Toni Morrison and writing through trauma, I think that there's a lot of art that's impacted by trauma. I think that there's a kind of way, and that I wrote about this when I was actually completing my dissertation. I wrote about Black women in pain, because that topic was something that was actually relatively taboo. People didn't want to talk about trauma. There's still stigma and shame about sharing like those experiences. But that's what drew me to Black women's writing, is that they actually ripped the veil off of a lot of those conversations, right? And so engaging with trauma, talking about trauma, I think that that's as important as talking about other topics. I think Zora Neale Hurston has this beautiful quote that I really return to often, where she says, if you're silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. And I sit with that because there are so many mechanisms that seek to silence our voices when we experience trauma, or even tell us it didn't happen or that we're overreacting. Those kinds of things and writing about it are so important. So, yeah.
Don't forget, this is interactive, so if you've got a question, wave at us, and we would love to hear what's on your mind tonight as well. Enjoying this. And are you guys enjoying this conversation? Yeah? Anybody, any questions? Yes, ma'am, right there.
Great.
Right here?
Mike, right at the table if you want to grab it.
Yes, you. Hold on one sec. We're going to get a mic for you so that we can all hear. Okay. Your question?
Why are we doing this on the last day of all days in Black History Month?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't know that I can answer that question, nor can Dr. McCormick.
Well, I
That's a
can
question for
try.
TCC, maybe?
I
Yeah,
can try.
okay, go
I
ahead.
can try. You know, because I think that's an interesting question, because I think one of the things that we get kind of mixed up on is that we have to kind of celebrate Blackness in 1 month, and it's all we have. But we are Black 365 days a year, right? And you can celebrate Black people in more than February. And I think that I would see this as, because I've seen some people use the last day of Black History Month as a link to Women's History Month, and think about Black women's history, thinking about solidarity movements. I think that we, on this day, thinking about it as a reflection, I'd like to see it as like what would be a kickoff to a continual conversation about Black contributions to society. And I think that organizationally, and it's something that I've worked to do in my own department, is to make sure that year round we're reminding people that when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about the issues that we need to be talking about, we can't wait for a moment and then let that moment pass and then go about our lives. So I really like that question, and I appreciate you asking it.
Gentleman back in the Texas Rangers cap. Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello. My question is, what are university African American studies and professors doing about the change with our ancestors being slaves on America, and what can we do to, I don't want to say compensate, but in a way I do, but I also want to say an apology from the United States of America for what has been brought about slavery, so that we all as Blacks, as African Americans, can move forward in life with this, I don't want to say a stigma, but this trauma of knowing that slavery has not been reached by the founding fathers, not only them, but the government of the United States of America. What are African American professors and universities doing to make some movement on that?
Yeah, yeah. I will say I appreciate that question, because when we talk about, so there's a real important bridge that has to happen between talking and action. And I think that we've gotten to a point in society where we're close to having the conversations that are necessary, but we are still struggling for people to embrace the discomfort of those conversations. And I think that one of the things that we have to do is to, A, have the conversation and be uncomfortable, because you really can't right a wrong that you don't acknowledge. And when I think about, so I don't know how many of you all heard of the Equal Justice Initiative. The Equal Justice Initiative has created a kind of lynching memorial project, as well as a museum in Montgomery, Alabama, that traces slavery to mass incarceration and that carceral continuum. And one of the things that I love about that space is that people go and they see the lived experience, and they have to reckon with it. They have to reckon with the past and what happened. And they're not running away from it. They're not trying to suppress it. And I think that that kind of activity needs to be replicated across this nation. And I also think, because they do a soil collection, and in Fort Worth, some of my colleagues brought back the soil of the site in Fort Worth where Fred Rouse was lynched. I don't know if you all have heard of that. There's a tour that happens to go through the process and that history of his lynching. And they actually had the soil in Montgomery, and they gave it back to activists in Fort Worth that wanted to honor Fred Rouse's memory. So when I think about the importance of having the conversation and getting there, we have to do that critical work. We have to document the harm. But then the other question around what you were asking is, you can't repair harm that is ongoing. You know, when I think about mass incarceration, when I think about wealth inequality, and I know these things are in some spaces not even allowed for people to talk about in public because there's been such a backlash to actually having real conversations, but you can't reconcile, right? You can't reconcile things that we can't talk about. So I feel like in terms of universities, one of the biggest things in my job is I see the classroom as a space of possibility to teach these histories, to educate students, and to give them tools to go out into the world and be better than what they've received. And that's not a guarantee, but at least I planted the seed. So that's one thing university professors are doing. The other thing university professors are doing are partnering with institutions, which can be tricky, but to examine like these histories of race and reconciliation and to create, because there's a lot of knowledge that has been lost because of the lack of archiving, the lack of preservation. I know this is a long answer, so I'm going to stop. But I just wanted to tell you that I really appreciate that call because it's very easy to kind of get in a space of an ivory tower, you know, that's what they call it in the academy, and to get comfortable and to not see the work you do as having a direct impact on the communities outside. And people have to be mindful that with great power comes responsibility. And so we can't stay kind of ensconced in our comfortable positions and think that just us achieving is enough. Because if my achievement only benefits me, then that's not achievement to me, right? That's personal. But we have to think about our own work as community work. And that doesn't mean we have to overwork ourselves or give all these things, but we have to think about who is this promotion, this thing I'm doing, benefiting outside of me, right? That's the question. So I really appreciate that call to action to think about that.
Excellent, excellent. There was another one. Did Sergio have a follow-up? Okay. It's for me? Oh,
I've tried to do some recent study on it, but we have not had a Black Million Man March in quite some time. Do you see that coming here in the future so we can kind of address some of the teen violence with guns and to show that African American male are a positive influence to the American country and that we can move forward to help these teenagers see the positivity in a black male?
I don't know if there will be another Million Man March or not. That was an event for those of you who were born, that was what, 92, 93. So if you were born after that, you'll need to Google that. It was a big event. I don't know if there will be another Million Man March or not, but I do know that, it is time for men to step up and to be the men that we've been called to be, number one, in our communities and our families. The good thing is that there are some great organizations that are doing that. Not necessarily enough, but there are some good ones that are out there doing that. And so it just takes more of us to show up at the schools, those of us who are fathers, to show up at our kids' school, to get involved in school, not just show up at the games, but show up at the classrooms to find out what's going on, have a constant dialogue with the principal, with the teacher, anybody who is involved in your kid's life. You need to be there too. They need to see dad. I love when you pass by the schools and you see those donuts with dad signs. That's great. But we need to do more than just have donuts. We need to show up just not on the day that they're passing out donuts, but they need to know, my kids are adults. And so, but when they were in school, their teachers knew that I would just show up randomly because I need to know what's going on in here. And y'all need to know that if you're having an issue with them, then I'm the one that you need to contact. I think it just starts with men being men and showing up. I heard someone say half the job is showing up. All right, so let's do this. What are the most significant issues facing Black artists and creatives in the 21st century?
Oh, yeah. I really like that question because, so just so y'all know, I got these questions in advance. And I was able to think about them a little bit. But that one in particular, and it actually speaks to something that I just talked about in terms of thinking about Black existence today when it comes to repair or being a commodity. And there's actually an artist that I wanted to share their work, or they might not have made it into the slide, but their name is Hank Willis Thomas. If you Google his name, Hank Willis Thomas, I think that he actually encapsulates this, and it's this kind of real connection to talking about Blackness and visualizing Blackness, but not commodifying it. And when I say that, I'm thinking particularly about how there's a relationship of Blackness to capital. If you think about the way Black experience is often absorbed and then packaged and sold back to the culture, there's a way that Black artists kind of get caught up in that. And I think when we think about the challenges of Black art, so Hank Willis Thomas has this series where he calls it Branded. And he talks about Black performers, Black athletes in particular. Like there's a image he has of a shoe, a Nike shoe, and a chain and a ball. And he's forcing us to think about the relationships between our work and its branding. And I think that as we have these conversations about Black art and its importance, one, I think the challenge is for Black artists to remain authentically themselves and not necessarily succumb to those politics of capital and commodity.
Let's talk about non-traditional forms of art. You know, technology is there. So we've got AI, we've got social media, digital. Do they have the same impact as, say, other forms like painting and sculptures?
So yeah, we've been having this conversation about AI because I think you now can have someone write a whole paper. I assign papers and a student can go put in the prompt and then they give me back this beautiful paper and I'm like, ooh.
And not only that, but it's now on social media.
Images.
My wife and I went out this past weekend, and I was, post the picture, and you write the little caption, and then it says, well, would you like it funny? Would you like it, serious, religious?
Yeah.
And so I just clicked, and they rewrote what I wrote, but it was beautiful. I went with that. She thought it was great. I was like, yeah.
Some people have found out how to use it and use it effectively. So
right.
I must say, I'm still kind of new to the use of AI. I've tried out ChatGPT. I know a little bit about some of it. But I've been thinking about this question. I don't know if it's something we should fear, right? You just used it and it worked for you. But it's more about what about our humanity can't be replicated? Maybe the step is to say, okay, this machine can do all these great things, but it can't express the essence of who I am. How do I bring that into the world in a non-replicable way? And I think it's going to push us to actually be, I guess, more effective representations of ourselves if we accept the challenge, right?
All right. Any more questions? Anybody got a question? Let me see your hand. Thought I saw somebody over here earlier, but okay. We'll come back to you if you have a question. How do you think that we can bring African art and culture to the same level of interest and understanding that other cultures have?
I was sitting with that one. I think we have. I actually think we have. One of the things so I've worked with a few museums here in Fort Worth and Amon Carter, the Modern, and they have taken Black art and put it out into the community. Sometimes if you go, say, down to West 7th or to some of these other areas, they have installations that are public-based. And much of it is Black art. I think the big issue is maybe the investment in experiencing Blackness outside of like the stereotype. I think there are certain kinds of Black art that people will take in more than, say, others. But I do think we are seeing a lot of increased interest and support for Black artists in spaces that historically have not been necessarily those
Right.
spaces.
And when you say certain types, what do you mean? What types?
Visual art.
Okay.
I just did a talk back for the Fort Worth Opera for a opera called Driving While Black. Did anyone have a chance to see that when it was here? It was really good, and it was an opera that dealt with what it meant to raise a son. It was about a mother who was raising her son, and it traces his journey from childhood to learning how to drive, and what it means for a black child to learn how to drive and then have to navigate the world in a space where historically there have been police interactions, targeting, and things like that. That's an opera that was written by a black librettist and performed by an all black cast. And so I think that there's really a lot of creative work. I think we just have to get out there and your work and amplifying it, right? How can media and these other entities support and amplify that work?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How about this one right here? Should politics influence art, or should art influence politics? And
So-
we're in a tough political situation right now in our country. So, how should art influence that, or should it?
I was going to say, I think that they're intrinsically connected.
Hmm.
I think that art is a reflection of the political realities. And I think also the political realities encourage people to produce art. I remember when I was finishing some of the work I was doing for the dissertation, and there was a move from kind of looking at Black experience, and then Barack Obama kind of surged in prominence, and so we became post-racial. It's like, oh, we're done with all that, right? 2008, we're free, no more racism, everything's post-racial, get out the confetti. And honestly, that was really premature.
You think?
Yeah. But the thing is, artists saw that coming, and they were producing art that was challenging this idea of being post-racial. And they were like, oh, hold on, right? That's a political reality that artists were responding to. And then you see the results of 2020, Trayvon Martin, all of these different events, political events that spurred all of this resurgence of Black art, as well as like an increase. I wouldn't even say resurgence because so much of it has been there, but there was just widespread need for people to share their voices through art. And I think, that's why I keep going back to this idea of the imagination and its power. And I guess I'll share this quote because I think that it is a part of this. And this is someone named Adrienne Marie Brown. Adrienne Marie Brown has a book called Emergent Strategy that I highly recommend. And this quote comes from that. And I just wanted to read a little bit of what she says.
Please.
Because this is very much around this imagination battle that she talks about. And she says, we are in an imagination battle. Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Remnisha McBride and so many others are dead because in some imagination they were dangerous. And that imagination is so respected that those who kill based on an imagined, racialized fear of Black people are rarely held accountable. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination turns brown bombers into terrorists and white bombers into mentally ill victims. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of ability. I often feel trapped inside someone else's capability. I often feel I am trapped inside someone else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. And I think about that and the political work of the imagination. So I don't necessarily separate them. I think that they are a part of it's an arm of the battle to make sure that we have an equitable and just world. We can't have a world like that if we don't imagine it first, right? And so that's something that is really important to me.
Absolutely. We have certain segments of our country and certain people who and we've seen on the news the book bannings, the book burnings. How do we, certainly as artists, deal with that, and how should we deal with that?
That's a really hard question. So being at a private institution, it's very interesting because we have not necessarily had the removal of funds or the closures of offices or even any of that happening because there's a little bit more agency in that private space. But I feel like that doesn't necessarily protect us, right? And I think, and I'm a mom too, so I really appreciate you talking about your children. There is a real concern that I have that we are silencing discourse in a way that is harming our children. And I get to, when I see my students come in, because I teach everyone from freshmen to seniors and graduate students, and it's a moment because I teach a lot about Black history. I teach a lot about authors and things like that. And my students, there's an arc that I've started to see where they go from eager to be in the class to angry because they didn't get exposure. And so they are behind in terms of critical thinking, in terms of knowledge, in terms of just a holistic view of a broader world. And they feel cheated. They feel cheated. And they're like, here I am, and I was told that I had all the tools for success, but I get in your class and I find out I haven't even been given the little bit that I need to be able to succeed here. And there's a moment for me where I'm like, this is the result of closing down that discourse. This is the result of telling people that there are subjects you can't talk about. Because we are actually harming ourselves and our futures by doing that. And it's hard to see. And I really hope that there are some shifts and some pushback in order to stop some of this book banning and other kinds of foreclosures of conversations.
Absolutely. As we prepare to wrap,
Yeah.
and thank you for that. Are there any other questions before we prepare to close this out? Yes, ma'am, right there.
Yes.
Let's get her a microphone. Have y'all enjoyed this segment? Thank you. Yes, your question, please.
Okay. How do you feel about today's mainstream Black artists that affect a part of the Black people culture that consider themselves pretty conservative?
Okay. Did you want to? Okay. So can I repeat it back to you to make sure I understood it? How do we feel about the Black artists who've kind of moved into mainstream culture and are conservative, that are not conservative? And how do I feel about kind of their push into mainstream? Okay. I will say that one of the things, and maybe it's my own kind of sphere of experience, is that whenever I've encountered Black artists, usually it's people who are pushing back against some of the, how would I say, ideologies that take away agency, ideologies that are demeaning, and actually calling for social awareness. So those are kind of the people that I tend to gravitate toward. And so when I think about it, I'm like, well, that's what we've always done, right? As Black artists, as Black people, is that we have pushed that thinking. We have challenged social understanding. And I also think that there's a way that we've gotten bogged down culturally in these binaries of conservative, liberal, all of these identities I think people hold on to. And I've even seen some Black artists who refuse categories, right? And refuse to kind of put themselves in boxes. And I think, that's one way to navigate being so vocal, is to kind of just say, I'm who I am, I believe what I believe, and I'm not going to be pigeonholed or boxed in, to have to legitimize myself. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, that's kind of been my sphere of experience.
And I guess for me, being a radio person, it's always been about the music. And
Yes.
music has always reflected, what is going on in society. Think about, in the 70s, you had Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. I'm a kid of the 80s, so I remember there was a song by Grandmaster Flash called The Message.
Yes.
Remember that? Don't push me because I'm close to the end. And it talked about everything that was going on, in that person's experience. Then you had artists like Nipsey Hussle, you had Tupac, and others who have written songs and recorded songs dealing with their experience. So just because it's not your experience does not mean that it's bad. It's their experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there have always been artists who, like you said, will express what's going on. Anybody else have anything? Yes, sir.
Evening. My name is Frank. I'm a coordinator at the of Intercultural Network at the Southeast Campus. My question is, speaking about music, I believe music evokes emotion. With a lot of music that we hear now, i.e. trap music, drill music, what is your thoughts on what it's doing to our younger generation, as well as people in my age? I was born in the 80s. What do you think that type of music, when they're talking about some of the negative connotations of urban cities where we come from, and how it's affecting our climate today?
Again, I mean, from my standpoint, it's about their perspective in terms of their art. And I can't say to, this person that, your album's trash because I don't like it. That's just my opinion. Now, as far as it affecting our kids, it goes back to what I said previously. As dads, as parents, it's our responsibility. So even though, when my kids were growing up, what are you listening to? Let me read the lyrics. No, you're not listening to that in here. And you have to have those difficult conversations. I was never the cool dad. I didn't care. Because that's not my job. My job's not to be the cool dad. My job is to be the dad. My job is to be a parent, which is a verb. It's not a noun.
And I would also say one of the things that I've loved about this new media landscape is that we get exposed to so much more outside of radio. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, I don't want to diss radio.
That's what it is.
But I think about like mediums, say like Pandora, Spotify, stuff like that, where they'll introduce you to new artists. I think that the thing that I would say is so important is to expose the people in your life to more than what they're being fed. Because what they're being fed is like a steady diet of, what's sellable. It goes back to what I was talking about in terms of profit and Black art. The thing that sells is the thing that's legible. And so all the music sounds about the same. And, I would say there are creators who are piercing that, but they might not get in the mainstream. So it's up to us to find them. And, I know that in your work, you are doing interventions where you're bringing people to the forefront that we normally wouldn't have heard, right? Or having that kind of conversation. So it's a challenge, but I think that there's so much more than that, those two genres or those genres. We just have to be more intentional about engaging with them.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Texas Ranger Cap again.
Yeah, you speaking on music now. This is my subject. But now to speak on what he's just saying, why is radio? I guess I don't want to say it in a rude way, but why is radio not pushing for? We know that hip hop is not going anywhere, but why are we not pushing that our artists not only whatever they're doing with their label or with their record, they do that, but also put out a positive one, like Let's Get It On, Marvin Gaye, like the era before them, you know, Michael Jackson and things like Tupac didn't just speak about thug. Tupac defied what thug meant, and he spoke about positivity in this world. And now it's the rap game has just went to everybody can do this and this and this. But as coach, as as an African American male father as well, who lived that lifestyle, it does not define who you are, because what defines who you are is what's inside of you. So what are we doing as mainstream media to let this be known to record labels that it's time? Because if I'm not mistaken, Busta Rhymes got up there and said something at the Rap Awards that something needs to change with the rap. We speaking the same lyrics, but we ain't putting positivity out there. So I'm just again, I'm sorry to go on with this. This is really my passion. What can we do to bring a positive outlook on rap where it's at today?
Well, one thing, we don't play hip hop. So, but I honestly, I don't know what the answer is, because if a radio, we can't no more tell an artist what to put out than I can, tell you what to wear today. It's just whatever their art is whatever it is. Now, we can choose not to play it. I mean, that's because we're not regulated. No one's telling us, oh, you have to play, these particular songs. Now, that's where, a radio station could decide we're going to take a stand. But then, and I know we're talking about art, but now we're getting into radio conversation, because then you've got your competitors who are going to play it. And if your competitors are going to play it and then they get the ratings, well, ratings brings about revenue. If you don't get any revenue, then you're out of business. And so that's a very small, answer, but it's a lot more to it. But I appreciate that question, and we hear that question all the time. Our final question as we wrap this up: what inspiration can you share with current students who are wanting to pursue a career in the arts?
Okay, I like that question. So I would say, because this is something that's come up recently for me. So my journey, I've talked a lot about artistic production, but I also have moved toward reproductive justice. And the work that I do and I'm passionate about it because I nearly died giving birth to my children, but I also care deeply about healing some of the past harm, speaking of some of that harm. In gynecological medicine, in these spaces. That was always on my radar when I was coming forward, but I resisted going toward it because it felt too personal. And I use art as a way to navigate those real personal things that I couldn't really talk about. So I would say that one of the things I would tell anyone who's aspiring to a career in art, in career in any type of literary study, any type of exploration in that realm, is to do really what speaks to you and be unapologetic about it. Because the thing that separates the work you do and what you can offer to the world is your unique perspective. And I think sometimes we shapeshift in order to appear amenable to spaces. We diminish ourselves. We even show up as like 75% of ourselves because we don't want to be too much. And I know that because I spend a lot of time shrinking myself, dealing with imposter syndrome, dealing with a lot of the things that would make me feel less than. I was already capitulating to the less than before anybody even told me I was. And I really, if I could just stop somebody from doing that and tell people, you are in the space you're in for a reason. You don't deserve to be there just as much as anybody else. And don't shrink yourself and go toward that thing that you love, because that's what's going to change the world. Because only you can do that thing. And yeah, that's what I would tell students or any aspiring artists or anyone seeking that kind of world life.
Excellent. Well, this has been an incredible experience, a great opportunity as we close out Black History Month, but we're not closing out the conversation.
Yes.
Conversation continues.
It
Only the
continues.
month ends. All right, you get
That's
that?
right. That's
So the
right.
conversation continues. Only the month is over. So, Dr. McCormick,
Mhm.
thank you very much. Nice to meet
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for having us this evening.
Yes.
And that is it.
All
So
right.
we need to stand,
Okay.
sitting.
Sure, sure.
Let's give him a round of applause. That was amazing. Let's give him a round of applause. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought, you guys asked a lot of great questions. I thought a lot of great points was made. I heard a lot of questions about the music and the younger generation, how it's affecting us. I like to say my little bit on that. I feel like as Black youth, we're only taking the opportunities that we see that are given to us. In the media, they only show us being rappers, entertainers, basketball players. That's all we see. So that's all we think we can be. Thing about change is that to be able to change, you have to be the change. So instead of showing, the younger generation that we can be drill artists, instead of listening to drill music, play something else, be something else. As me being a younger, young Black man, all I've saw growing up is that all I can be is a rapper, a hoodlum, all that stuff. But if I want to change, and if I want to change, the generation after me, I have to learn to be the change and be the voice of that. Because, with my people, I don't want to just be, an NBA player. I want to show the younger generation, my generation as well, that we're able to be doctors, we're able to be lawyers. We can do so much more than they tell us to be, and that they show us that we can be. So to change the generation, if you want to change people's ideals, especially the young generation and your generation as well, you have to change within yourself and be that change. But thank you on that.
Now, we will have Gloria Fisher from the TCC Foundation to announce the silent auction winners. Funds raised will go towards the TCC Student Emergency Funds.
What a wonderful night of so many wonderful entertainers and artists displayed tonight. So thank you all for that. Through the community generosity, we've had several donations for some wonderful prizes, gift baskets here. And so as was mentioned earlier about it's going to the Student Emergency Assisting Fund, what that is, and Leon, I see you back there, you can do a much better job explaining this than I can, but what this is to help our students with emergencies, like a blown tire, medical costs, medical fees. Many of our students, as my friend Flo in the health department here mentioned to me, that many of the students come and see her because they don't have insurance. They can't afford insurance. And so they have medical needs. We're in the middle of cold season. So medical needs, housing insecurities. We have food insecurities. We didn't have food pantries on our campuses when I started here at TCC. Now we have food pantries on all of our campuses. So there's a major need. So to learn more about the Student Emergency Assisting Fund, please visit the TCC website and search Student Emergency Fund to see how you can help your students. And students, also, if you need help, please let us know. With that said, tonight's silent auction raised over $700 for the Student Emergency Assistance Fund. So thank you all so much. We had some great baskets, and it's very tempting to not put my name on every single one of them, but I also wanted to walk out here without a bodyguard. So my friend Flo here is going to announce the winners, and once she's done announcing, if you will please join us over here to pay for your baskets and also to collect your prize. So thank you so very much for supporting our students at TCC.
Okay, good evening. So the first item is item number 1, the Jubilee Theater production passes. It's 2 passes and 1 Broadway pass. The winner is Aisha Malone. Another hot item was the Crumble Cookie gift card. And the winner is Magali Lopez. The next item was the TCC District Student Recruitment and Outreach Basket. That baseball cap was really a hit. And the winner for that one is Erica Goss Perez. This one was another hot item, the Black Coffee Basket, including a gift card. And the winner is Carol Walker. The self-care basket, which included a blanket, a book, and calendar. The winner is Desireen Pettifor. Did I pronounce the name correct? Okay. Congratulations. And the pink cowboy hat. Rosemary Wilson, you're the winner. Rosemary Wilson, you're the winner for the children's book basket as well. So for the TCC Foundation basket, Johnny Salas. For the Aetna backpack, Better Backpack, Erica Goss Perez. And the last was the coffee basket, Janae Coronado. Thank you.
Congratulations to the winner. I know there was a lot of great prizes. Now it's time for the door prizes as well. Compliments to TCC Trinity River Health Services, as everybody can look under their tablecloths to check and see if they have a piece of paper with the word prize on it. At the end of the program, you will receive a prize. It's okay, I know I'm not under there, so it's all good if you're disappointed. Woo! Congratulations to the young lady back there.
The most important gift is the gift of giving. So now we want to take the time to thank those who dedicated their time, talents, and treasures to make the 12th annual Celebrating Strides happen.
So if we mention your group, please stand.
The Celebrating Strides Committee and volunteers. Donors for the silent auction.
The guest speakers, singers, poets, and hostess. The Communication and Fine Arts Department at Tarrant County College District and the TCC dance performers.
The Department of Visual Arts at Tarrant County College Southeast Campus and the student musicians. Catering services, tech, and facilities.
No count to three, let's just say it. Okay.
Thank
you all for attending the Celebrating Strides, African Americans in the Arts.